Alrighty, we're kind of flying around, um, moving on to the Romans, kind of Imperial Rome, where the empire starts to grow. We're going to kind of talk about their social beliefs a little bit today, get a little bit into their philosophy, their poetry, which tells us a lot. You can learn about a culture, like we talked about earlier last week, through their religious beliefs, what they believe about creation and the afterlife, but you also learn a lot about kind of their poetry, their writings that they've left behind, as the writings will show kind of their cultural values. And sometimes this worries me about what, I don't know, in 200, 2,000 years, people will pick up and read from our time era, but whether it be, they just think we're Harry Potter fans, love magic, or something much worse, like Amish romance or something like that. No offense to those who like that. Um, anyways, we can learn through what people have written down. The social beliefs of the Romans, kind of stealing from the Greeks a lot. They wanted peace, but they also wanted like their empire to grow. So they were kind of at odds with themselves a little bit here, because Rome's destiny was ruling the world. However, the Romans themselves wanted peace. They wanted peace for themselves. They wanted their city to be kind of nice. They wanted to have that restful, more simple life that they didn't have to worry about things. But they weren't concerned about everyone having that life. It was more the social and cultural elite that wanted that life. And one of the ways that the social and cultural elite indoctrinated the people to help them live that way is by saying that one should sacrifice for the greater good, not for the sake of the self. And we've kind of heard that repeated throughout time, different cultures, throughout um, our culture, even, give up for not your sake, but for someone else's. I don't know. I might have heard this a couple of times, in the last year for some odd reason that, we should do something that we find uncomfortable to help other people, but whatever. So they have some virtues that go along with this gravitas, kind of everything should have this weight and for it, but really it is gratitude. So everything should have kind of weight, a little bit of gratitude, dignity, seriousness. Should be a little solemn, not killjoy. Um, pietist, piety, this religious understanding. Um, dignitas goes in with dignity, gravitas, so serious and dignified. And you should be virtuous. You should live a balanced life, according to Roman philosophy, which they get a lot from the Greeks. We see this in poetry, like of the early Roman poet Horace, where we get the often misaligned "seize the day" as almost like a YOLO type of thing, if we remember what that was. Um, we should live in the today, not worry ourselves, not be anxious, but it's not a reckless abandon. It's we should be solemn and serious about who we are, where we are, and what we're doing today, so that we're not going crazy about tomorrow, about the next day, right? So you have to have that gravitas, that solemnity. You have to have that dignity going on. It's not a rush out and do whatever you want to do because tomorrow you will die. It's that you trust tomorrow very little, because you don't know what it's going to bring, because the unknown is scary. You know the day, you know what's going on now. So trust in the now. One of his almost contemporaries is Juvenal, um, who's a little, well, I would call him a satirist. He's kind of poking fun at the culture, at kind of Rome, what they say they believe, and what they actually do. Um, so one of his poems is, "What about all those Greeks? That race most acceptable now to our wealthy Romans, that race I principally wish to flee, I'll swiftly reveal, and without embarrassment, my friends, I cannot stand a Rome full of Greeks, yet few of the dregs are Greeks." I'm going to ask you to reflect about this in your paper as we continue to go, but like you see this kind of like, I want to complain about the Greeks, but the Greeks are still the wealthy, the little bit of the ruling class. We haven't broken free from their cultural kind of grip. Uh, I don't like them. I want a Rome that is a Rome. Sure, we've heard that in the last few years too, something applicable. And then we get a complaint about the impoverished and um, how people always put each other down for not having what um, they were born into, right? People of privilege born into wealth, often putting down people, even though their privilege is not earned, and possibly, as he kind of hints at the end of this poem, um, it's not there at all. They have none of that dignity, none of that solemnity, because they are born in a brothel and sons of pimps. No one respectable, but they kind of put on the airs because they have money and want people to think that they're respectable. This one's highly relatable to me. Some days that it's hard to climb the ladder, right? I just don't have enough, right? Even I'm sure we've all felt this way, that I don't have enough and it takes money to make money, and so I'm just stuck. And I mean, keep going, kind of how undifferent our society is. He has a poem that he complains about the traffic. In the city, there's traffic everywhere, so you escape the country, but because of everyone's escaping the country to the countryside, there's traffic out there. There's always a crowd. But at the same time, the crowd always clears its way for the rich man. Keep going about violence, how there's always kind of this feeling of civil unrest, of being unsafe in your own home. Um, Always kind of going, well, I trust in the police, I trust in the soldiers, but at the same time, they can't be everywhere. You get this feeling of unease. So you kind of have this painting of the Roman city as this hustling, bustling metropolis where the wealthy get by on their privilege, earned or not, and the poor kind of struggle. Meals are expensive to them, even the meager drags are hard to buy. Um, Lodging is nasty and kind of cobbled together, and then it's just congested. And wherever you go to get out of the congestion, you run into more people. Or if you go out to the country, the police have, or the soldiers have kind of pushed out the thieves into the countryside, so you run into them there. And then when the soldiers crack down on the thieves in the countryside, they go back into the city, and you just have like this view of not this pretty pristine place. Like when I see Rome, kind of the reconstructions and kind of TV shows that kind of go over it, it's often presented, at least until the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years, something nice and pretty. And I think of this marble white all the time, or alabaster white type buildings, and it looks lovely. But then you read someone like Juvenal and you realize, well, they don't have their stuff together, right? There's always a facade behind things. And I'm sorry for the abrupt transition, but kind of shifting philosophically, this is very difficult to understand. This is from the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. The main philosophical understanding in Rome was Neoplatonism, from Plotinus, not from Plato, the Greek philosopher. Um, you can read all this and try to make sense of it, but kind of breaking it down, Neoplatonism says that everything has an inner and outer aspect. The inner aspect is kind of the essence of the thing, like what it is. The outer aspect is what type of fruit it produces, what type of activity it does. Um, Outer activity then produces other forms of activities: fruit, nourishment, speech, action, biography, history. Right? You have all of these like connected. Without fruit, you wouldn't have nourishment. Without nourishment, you wouldn't have speech. Without speech, you wouldn't have action. Without speech and action, you wouldn't have biography. Without speech and action and biography, you wouldn't have history. Without fruit, nourishment, speech, action, biography, and history, you wouldn't have this class, right? Everything's always connected. There is no randomness. Everything always hits some sort of causality, some sort of, there was a cause and there was effect. Everything flows together and you can't sever any of those chains. The inner activity will prefigure the outer activity. So it's not, and this comes into kind of Stoicism with the Greeks and Romans, but it's not that everything is kind of predetermined, but you don't have fully control over anything because everything is a little bit predetermined, right? It feels like I'm doing this because I'm doing it when I want to do it, but I want to do this because of reasons in the past and actions in the past. And I can, if I think hard enough, I can connect those back, right? I'm hungry right now because the Big Bang happened, or whatever theory of first causality, the beginning of the universe you have, right? You can trace it all the way back. Why didn't I turn in my homework? Well, because the world was created. True. Because you can hit all those little spots, and if all those little spots from the beginning of the world didn't happen, you wouldn't be where you were not turning in your homework. So I hope that explains a little bit about Neoplatonism, but the kind of human is broken down into two parts, where you have these lofty processes with the soul, kind of your mind, um, thinking, reason, and then the lower processes of our nature, the automatic parts of your life, um, digestion, breathing, heartbeat, um, defecation, urination, all that fun stuff, right? Those are all the lower parts. All of kind of a lot of your emotions in Neoplatonism would be put in your lower parts because it's the stuff that your body wants to do, has to do, and you don't have full control over it, like when you're hungry necessarily. You don't wish to be hungry. You just are hungry because your stomach is whatever. And go ask your, I don't know, nutrition teacher. Not here for that. But I hope this makes sense. Kind of the automatic parts of your life flow, and then should be kind of distrusted because you don't have complete control over them. Like your reason can't overcome your hunger, but at the same time, like you're hungry because the Big Bang or whatever the universe was created happened. But that's where our reason comes in, is we should know that I am hungry because the world was created. I was hungry because of this chain of causal events has happened. Neoplatonist ethics highlighted kind of justice, prudence, temperance, courage, moderation. A lot of the Greek ethics, especially with Aristotle, emphasized balance, and Neoplatonism has that. Um, you want to live the great life. You want to live the excellent life, not the mundane life. But sometimes you just can't. And we run into issues where you just can't be the best because the world was created and you just weren't the best, but you're supposed to be the best that you were created to be, that the causal events, and you're not supposed to fight against that causal chain. That's the life of excellence. It's not that I'm living an unethical life because I can't dunk. It's I'm living the excellent life because I am not fighting against the causal chain that has gotten me to where I am. So for your reflection paper, I want you to write on kind of this idea of how is there connection between the values of Rome and our contemporary values, especially focusing on the poetry kind of Juvenal.